Commissioner Uribe, final questions or thoughts?
I'm sitting here when you told us about the property on Orange Avenue and how you guys couldn't get it donated, yet your executive director is the owner of said property. I mean, I'm so sorry, but this seems like such a major conflict. I mean, can you tell me how you're talking to the family who owns the property and they're like, no, we're not going to give it to you? I remember seeing an interview recently where an investor was saying, look, I'm just an investor. I don't have anything to do with anything. But how did that transpire? Don't you think that was a conflict when you guys made her your executive director? So she owns the property, profited from the property, and now she's making decisions to not assist the organization that she's leading.
Well, at the time that the discussion for donating was taking place, she had already left the organization.
So all these years, you guys never talked about actually using that property as a memorial or a museum?
We did, and the goal was to purchase it for $2 million, which was what the city had offered to purchase it for in 2016. And as we tried to raise money, we kept getting pushback because people did not feel that we should use that money to purchase the land from her, from the owners. And so that's when we said we're going to ask if they would donate it, because it was clear us trying to raise money to build anything was running into a standstill regarding the memorial if the money was going to go toward buying the land, but we needed to buy the land before we could do anything. So it was like you couldn't get there from here. So that's why we said, would you donate it? And we were not able to reach an agreement on that.
Okay, I'm so sorry. It just seems like such a conflict of interest when you're discussing this and you're explaining to us, we couldn't buy it, she wouldn't donate it. Oh, by the way, she's our executive director who's making money off of this entire nonprofit, and I'm just seeing like red flags. Secondly, you discussed, getting a lot of scholarships. And while I have been to many of the beautiful events over the years as we celebrate and you give out these scholarships, again, when you're doing development and you had staff that did development, how were we not able to target and do what needed to be done? Yes, we appreciate you wanting to give a scholarship. I don't even know how that conversation would go. But our mission is to build a museum for, it just doesn't quite sound right, and it doesn't quite go along, but yet, and I trust that you and the board were in good faith when you served on this board, and I trust that none of you were compensated for being on the board. It was a volunteer board?
That is correct.
Okay. But you all are professionals, and this isn't the first board you've ever served on. It just seems like there were a lot of things that came in front of you that just didn't quite add up. I'm not saying that there was any malicious done, but just serious conflict of interest when you're doing this, because at the end of the day, your passion to serve was to serve all of those victims and their families. Right. And it's so sad for us to get here and to hear this conversation. I really didn't want to press my button again, but I'm like, wait a minute, did I just hear what she asked? The woman who ran the organization owned the property. And then her family owned the club where all these individuals passed away. So they made profit way over the years at this organization and didn't see fit to even donate it. I just think that should have been a clear, you shouldn't be running an organization where you're not even willing to give to it yourself, knowing that this is where the tragedy happened. And that's major. And then, and with all the staff, what was the staff for? Were they out there to raise money? Were these development folks?
You had development folks, you had scholarship, you had finance, publicity. But again, I think at the height it was 14. This is not a big staff in a nonprofit.
But to be 14 but not to be able to accomplish the goal is where it's discerning, because
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I just want to say, Comptroller, thank you for trying to take this on. I understand when you do audits, you give us reports on what needs to be fixed, and Mr. Brooks has the pleasure of responding on how we get those things done. But I think for the public, for these families, If we can't do it, we should ask the state to look into this. We should ask the IRS to look into this, because there has to be some accountability of the millions of dollars over all these years that have been spent. And I think at the end of the day, I know it's hard to dissolve a nonprofit because you guys got in it, but I think it's the right thing to do to give back the dignity and allow something fresh to take over. But I also think that we can't do a memorial, but we should look at a Pulse Memorial Museum. I mean, is it about the words? Because we know people come from all over the world to see this memorial that's there right now. We know, I remember one time I drove by and the First Lady was there. I know Ricky Martin was there. He took pictures there. I mean, people come from the world to see this. And when you think of that, those are tourist development tax dollars, and we need to do what's right. That's what I need to do right. But it's just frustrating to hear, and I know that you guys had to make a conscious decision. And again, I'm thankful that you showed up here and saw us firsthand, but you saw the emotion on this
Sure.
board. We all just think of what ultimately happened that night and how do we make this right. But I got to tell you, I mean, I don't know if you're capable of, but your books should be completely open and transparent. Where you spent money over the last years. When you hired 8 people or 18 people to go raise money, how much did they raise? You know, these questions are, any organization, any business should be able to say, well, these 18 people raised 10 million a year, and yet we spent 18 million a year. So clearly, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I think for the public and for what's left, and as you dissolve this, you guys should offer those. I trust that your CFO was very, very competent in what he did, but try not to make us go chase this. I mean, let us see what's there. Let us see what's happened. Let us see what we can fix, and let us see what we can try to do to move forward. So thank you again for your service. Thank you for standing here. But my goodness, when you spoke, it's just more frustrating than not to hear some of these things that we weren't aware of, the details of that. And thank you, Commissioner Bonilla. I understood where she was going. It was like emotion, but it was like, wait a minute, this doesn't quite add up. So I hope that you guys will consider doing that, since comptroller is limited. Let us see what's been spent and why and how and what's been brought in.
Okay.